Welcome to everybody to our panel with the title Transnational Perspectives on Democratizing Work, Connecting Workers' Struggles Along the Garment Value Chain. I'm excited to be here. My name is Felix. I'm a labor researcher currently working at FH Münster, a University of Applied Science, where I work mainly on the work of content moderators and people who work in retail. And with me is
Johanna Lauber. I'm currently doing a PhD on cooperation between trade unions and social movements within the European social forums, which some people might not know, but the World Social Forum, I guess, most people here have heard about. And yeah, and I'm together with Felix, the chair of this panel, and also excited to see you all.
So first of all, before we start, also thanks to the organizers, also to the people around Lisa Herzog and the others, who is our technical chair, and of course to our two wonderful guests that we will introduce soon, Ditthi and Janina. Great to have you here. So thank you also to all of you to come here to our session. Just the little side note, so this panel is also a live recording event for our podcast, Democratizing Work, which is a podcast that we have been running now for 11 sessions for almost around a year. And this is a podcast project by the Liaison Office, Science and the World of Work at the Technical University of Berlin, and the Forum on New Politics of Work. That's an association where people active in trade unions, science and politics meet and discuss possible progressive politics of labor. And once a month, we discuss with trade unionists, works council members, academics, and activists why it's time for more democracy in our working world and what challenges and opportunities arise in this field. So just as a first note, unfortunately, Saskia Stock cannot join today because she fell sick. We wish her that she gets better soon. And with that, I would come to some small technical remarks. So we will first have a panel discussion with Ditthi and Janina. And you are able to ask questions in the Q&A part of the session, where you can see this little dot there, Q&A. So you can just ask questions there already during the event. You can also ask them in person later. That will also be possible. Just feel free to post any questions there. This event will be recorded. It is already being recorded, and we will also publish it as a podcast episode. And with that, I hand over to Johanna.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, start just with a quick introduction to our topic here. So global value chains have become almost synonymous with extreme forms of overexploitation, undercutting competition in regard to labor rights and wages, and yeah, the omnipotence of a few buying firms in the global north. And while there have, especially in Germany, recently been a lot of discussion about due diligence laws that are trying to regulate supply chains, more or less binding regulations, and yeah, make them respect basic human rights. There have also been attempts by workers themselves along the supply chain to take care of these issues and to make their voices heard. Also cooperating cross borders, and yeah, one of these cases, or not just one, some of these cases we want to discuss today in our panel session. And also I wanted to share that there has recently been a really great success along the supply chain of H&M in February this year. There has been a 8-month struggle coming to an end that had also employed international solidarity and had successfully forced H&M to, or the supplier for H&M, not H&M directly, to accept to respect a union and to reinstate 1,257 workers that had been fired. And so I think that's a great success, and that happened amid the global pandemic. So that gives some hope, and I wanted to mention that here to open the discussion, to start our discussion. And what I also want to mention is that what we had in mind with this panel session is a bit like we have a focus on two perspectives. On the one hand, we want to talk about democracy at work along the supply chain in different areas of the world. And at the same time, we also want to talk about like a democratic way of organizing and democratic way of transnational cooperation between workers. And I think the examples we're going to talk about, will show attempts to do that and to have a bottom-up approach. And so that's as an introduction. I think.
Okay.
We're ready to start.
Yeah. So I welcome Janina Hirth in our panel. Janina is involved with the Exchange Network. That's a network that is committed to develop and strengthen links between workers from Asia and Europe, working along the subcontracting chain of garment production. Janina is a political scientist and is also working for the Gender Women's Research Center of the Universities in Hessen, in Frankfurt am Main. And she has an interest in feminist science and technology studies, feminist and post-colonial perspectives on development, digitalization, and social transformation, and of course also labor issues. Recently, she has co-authored an article, Algorithmic Assembly Lines, Digitalization and Resistance in the Retail Sector, together with her colleague, Markus Rein. Hello, Janina. Great to have you here.
Hello, Felix. Hello, Johanna. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and our second guest is Ditthi Bhattacharya from Ditthi, and you have been, let me just, you have worked for the Center for Workers' Management in India for over a decade, and the center was set up by trade unions and is functioning as a trade union resource center. You mainly work with unions that have not like traditionally been affiliated with parties, but as far as I understood, you're not restricted to that. And you support unions, especially in regard to collective bargaining and freedom of association. And the garment sector is one sector that you've been active in, and with the unions there, you've been working together. And also you are involved in the cooperation with workers in Germany along the supply chains of the retail companies Primark and H&M. Thank you that you're here.
Thank you, Johanna. Thank you, Felix, for having me here.
Yeah, then let's jump right in. We are still in the global pandemic, and maybe that's also one of the reasons why we have this forum online, although it's also a great opportunity for us to chair a panel like this without traveling around the world. However, the effects of this global pandemic on labor are severe. Many workers have lost their jobs. We have heard about these cases in India and elsewhere where big retail companies canceled contracts, and subsequently workers have lost their jobs without warning or anything. And it is hard for them to make ends meet. Also, if they have work, maybe with reduced hours and pay. So, Ditthi, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the current and general challenges in the garment sector in India in these times.
Thanks, Felix. Yeah, you are bang on, and yes, the situation is very bad. And what we see right now is almost like post fallout of the pandemic and the lockdown, because during the lockdown, there was closures, which at least people had the hope that some of the factories would open up. But now with the continuing lack of orders, restructuring that the big corporations are undergoing because of their own financial restructuring, organizational restructuring, possibly some part of it is part of the digitalization that we are going to see in the next few years. But all of that has translated into a certain form of restructuring of the supply chain as well. So there is, while there is closures in some factories, which, as Johanna said at the beginning, that we did fight a very long struggle in one of the factories where over 1,200 women were suspended initially and then terminated, but which was an H&M supplier, but then they have got reinstated. But what we are also seeing is a lot of factories are closing down and new factories are opening up in new areas. So it's not like H&M has stopped ordering from India or is sourcing from India, but what they're doing is they actually stop sourcing from areas where there is some form of organization, some form of regulation, and they're moving to new areas, new factories where there are completely new batch of workers who are not organized, who have no sense of what the laws are. And hence, as a result, it's a complete new territory for them. So you're able to exploit workers more because you have to, for the unions, it's to start from scratch all over again. So, so for big multinational corporations that are sourcing from countries like India, it's like an opportunity. It's not a crisis. It's actually an opportunity to restructure their supply and sourcing position and be able to bargain for lower prices and bargain for lower cost of sourcing their products, because at the end of the day, they're able to now put pressure through this whole mechanism that we're going to stop production in your factories. So unless you give us a lower cost, a lower price, we will not source from you. So they are able to negotiate better prices for themselves and hence making it worse for the workers here.
Okay, yeah, tough times. So would you say that the pandemic is just being used as a pretext for kind of plans that were already in the making?
Well, yes, absolutely. I would really say so, because what would have possibly, we've heard even managers, lower end managers tell us that what would have taken them close to 5 or 6 years, they've been able to do it in the last 1 year. So they've been able to do things in one go, what they would have taken much longer for them to do, given the resistance that workers would have initiated. But given that the workers were in that kind of crisis, there's no resistance except in very localized areas where there are strong unions. What we are seeing is actually that they have been able to push through certain changes that that would have taken much longer to roll out. And for India, actually, even the government has done the same. So given the fact that during the pandemic and especially during the lockdown, what the government of India did is actually change all our labor laws. And they've come up with 4 new labor codes, which takes away all our established rights. So both have gone hand in hand. And that's like taking away all rights legally as well as effectively.
Okay, yeah. Then maybe let's also look at the German context. As I said before, we plan to have Saskia Stock, the Works Council member from H&M Germany here. But Janina has also been involved with the struggles here in Germany, and is also able to tell us a bit about the current situation here. So Janina, what are the current struggles and what is the situation of the people who sell the products that are being produced, amongst others, also in India?
Yes, I can only agree with Ditthi on this broader transformation that is taking place, not only now during the pandemic, but also before. But of course, it accelerated a lot, the whole digitalization process. Like we're not only working with H&M, but different, especially like young fashion textile stores. So we're also working with Zara, which is kind of the pioneer in the field of bringing in digitalization tools, also connecting offline and online services. So we already saw like some major changes that came step by step, starting in something like 2015, 2016, when they introduced RFID chips in all the clothes. And then there came like new store management systems, and there came new apps for the customers and so on. And then just like after years and after the employees recognize that there's also new forms of control possible, that like all their working steps can be like followed just in time, we saw that this is like a bigger transformation than just introducing some new digital tools. And so, of course, already before the pandemic, the other big brands were looking at Zara to like follow them and also pick up the digital trend. And H&M was talking about like introducing more digitalized tools before the pandemic, but then they like tried to also use the lockdown last spring 2020, and said, here H&M Works Council, we introduced to you a pact on digitalization. You already wanted to bargain about digitalization. Now we give you this contract. There's everything in you asked for. But in the end, it was kind of a suggestion that would have taken away all the rights of co-determination for the work councils. And I would say, like, luckily, with all the experiences and discussions and exchanges we had before, we were better prepared than also at Zara, at H&M, and the Works Council, they stayed really strong, and they denied this contract, and they said, we want to have like a real bargaining on digitalization. We want to discuss it with our colleagues. We want to see how it shapes and how it transforms the working process on the ground. We also don't want to talk only about like closing of stores. We want to talk about how the work is transforming for the people that will still be there. And so yeah, they ask for bargaining a real collective contract. And this is a process that has started last spring, but it's still, it's still a big discussion. It's not ended yet, but at least they're in the position to say, no, we are not just introducing this. We block it until the management agrees to work on criteria how we want to introduce things. So this is a bit, the current situation at H&M. Of course, at the same time, there's also more stores closing, since it's also part of the digital strategy to close some stores, which doesn't necessarily only mean to like close down all the physical stores in all cities, but it's also part of the transformation to have a different store concept, to have more big showrooms in like more central spots where like little amounts of clothes are shown in a nicer way, and then they might maybe also be produced more just in time even than before. So there's like little clothes, little storage, and the brand just like shows itself, and yeah, then the production might also be affected by that. We can I guess, talk about this more later on.
Okay, sorry, I just had a problem to click. You kind of sketched out like these general transformations that are all tied to also a lot to the industrialization of retail with these new technical transformations. When I'm talking to people who work in retail, I also have the feeling that the nature of the work changes a bit, and that the working conditions also change a bit because of these new digital tools. I would be interested to hear from you, Janina, because I also know that you had close contacts with people who work in these stores. What changes on the ground? Maybe some examples so we can understand.
Yes, totally. Like in the end, the colleagues, we work with them a lot. We have discussions in the stores all the time. And like the general message they say is that in the end, the most important part of the work disappears more and more or is reduced more and more. And that is like talking to customers, having knowledge about the textiles, and having like a qualified job in this sense, also with like an emotional meaning to like, be in relation with customers, to advise them, to get like recognition from them as like a worker who kind of gives them a service. So this is also what the colleagues say, why they started to work in the retail sector and what they like about it. This, and also in addition to this, the team spirit, the working in the group, and the good spirit that was there before in the store. But now this changed a lot. As I already mentioned a bit with the digitalization, like the companies try to put the work more and more into piecework, kind of. So every step is kind of set by technology. Like your iPod you're carrying all the time tells you where to store the clothes, when, in which speed, and you're just like following a really rhythmic and stressful choreography in the end. And this even makes customers not like the ones you want to have a relation with and the ones you want to work with, but they are just bothering you in this stressful running around, storing away shirts and pants. So it actually changed quite a bit, as you see.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ditthi, you mentioned earlier that you expect, or maybe I got you wrong, maybe this is already happening, that these changes that are happening in the retail firms are also having an effect on the work in the garment factories. Maybe you can elaborate on that a bit, because I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, well, it's happening, but it's not happening as fast as it's happening in Germany or in the global north, but it's already setting in the factories, or rather in the higher end factories in our countries, which is basically what we have seen during the pandemic is what Janina is referring to as just-in-time production is what is actually coming into our work, affecting our work, which is when you say just-in-time production, it is about producing a small batch of a certain garment within a certain very small period of time. Now, if you have to do that, the technical part of what is done is the price for that product is negotiated at a certain productivity rate. But if it's for a very short period of time, for a very small batch of products, you do not reach that productivity rate because you take a little bit of time to catch up on that design, catch up speed on that certain pattern that you're working on. So by the time you've picked up on your speed, your product has changed again. And you're doing a completely different thing. And again, you're doing it for a very short period. So what ends up is that you get it's a much more stressful work, because you have to finish a certain number of pieces, because it's all piece rated. You have to finish it, or you are not able to deliver these products. And if you're not able to deliver these products, you're not able to get this work. So what is happening to the workers is that their productivity rate has increased, because they are not able to deliver. Unless they deliver at a certain period of time, they're not able to get the price. And that is what is the highest amount of loss that the suppliers have incurred during the pandemic, is that they were not able to deliver on time. And that delivery on time, the moment it fails on the delivery time, the entire money is lost. And the expenses are lost, the labor cost is lost. So then the company just actually collapses, because if it's a big order and you're not able to do it and deliver it on time, and you've lost the entire order, you've lost the entire money that you put into that order. So that's actually what is happening, and that's impacting the workers, because then supervision has increased, harassment on the shop floor has increased, because you're pushing for higher and higher productivity every day. And the more you're able to produce, next time it becomes higher, because you've been able to deliver 100 pieces. So the next time it comes as, okay, 110, so at least I can make my profit. I can recover some of the losses that I made during the pandemic by increasing the productivity from the workers. Because all you can do at the end of the day is vary the cost of the worker, and nothing else can be varied, because the cost of the materials remains constant. So productivity is constantly being pushed up. And that's really affecting workers, their health, their mental health. There's too much stress. People are dropping out of jobs, they're being fired. New workers are not female workers are being paid workers, like a larger makers. There's many workers coming in.
Okay. I think there are some technical difficulties. Was I the only one who experienced that? No? Okay. It seems maybe, Ditthi, that your connection is not that good at the moment. I don't know if there's some way to check this. But now actually you look and move very naturally again. Sorry. Maybe yeah, can you repeat what you said in the last 3 sentences again, so we check?
Okay, so the last thing is basically the productivity demands are constantly increasing. Can you hear me now?
Unfortunately, yeah, we can hear you, but it's very scrambled.
If I can just jump in, I think if you speak very slowly, it will hopefully work. I'm not sure there's anything we can do right now. I don't know whether it's on this platform or your connection. Apologies.
Okay, I will. Is it better now? If I go this.
Or is it maybe possible that it's a bit of a pity, but if you turn off your video, maybe that might work. I don't know, because it's using less bandwidth. Hello?
Does it work better now?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Okay, so basically the productivity demand is increasing because the workers, the cost of labor is the only variable that employers can look at. Everything else is constant or is increasing in price, and they're not able to control that price. So what they're trying to do is increase the productivity so that workers are producing more and more garments so that they can recover the losses that they incurred during the pandemic. So that's like a constant pressure that is now on the workers, and that's something that is really pushing them beyond their level of being able to take it.
Okay, yes. Yeah, sorry to everybody, but it is just what it is. The internet is not always good, also here. So maybe we have now heard from both of you with what people are struggling. And when you were telling these stories, I also wondered, would you say, Janina, that maybe this more Tayloristic and output-oriented and very strongly controlled types of labor are now kind of reintroduced and in the global north here in the retail sector, so that we could maybe say that the logics in the working conditions are coming nearer between the production and the retail sector?
Yes, I would say, of course, this is also like the thesis kind of our article and what we just saw in the discussions and analysis, that we come to a kind of assembly line in the service sector now, which we couldn't really imagine maybe a couple of years ago, that a service work that has like a qualified parts and like a human reaction to things could be controlled like this so precisely. But this is what we see at the moment, and at the same time, of course, it's our aim to resist that, to shape digitalization in a different way, like also like the management and the companies sell it. Technology is supposed to be an assistant. At the moment, it's not. At the moment, it's just putting more pressure. It's not helping with the work, but of course it can in theory if it's shaped according to the needs and the wants of the workers. And this is what we are organizing around. And this is also what Saskia would stress, that it's important to bring all the employees together to have a good collective bargaining, because also the work councils alone, they cannot put enough pressure on the management to really care for digitalization that takes up the needs of the workers as well. And looking at the question of whether the working conditions are coming closer, I would say that in general, our view, also with the workers-to-workers exchange and the direct support of the struggles, we could probably come back to the Gokaldas's example also later. We already made this experience before, also with the tools we're working with. We talk a lot about like how does the work affect the health of the workers, and how then is the health, of course, something you have your whole life, and you don't like leave at the store or at the factory after you are done working. You bring it to your family, you bring it to all the rest of your life as well. And in this work and these discussions about how does work affect my life and what stress does it bring, we already saw a lot of similarities actually between the colleagues in South Asia and the colleagues in Europe. Of course, it's not like one-to-one the same working processes, but still like some of the effects and the overall experience, and also the struggles that come with it, like precarious working contracts, not being really able to pay your rent because the salaries are really low, but also the mere stress and the being really exhausted when getting out of work. This is things we already saw as a similarity before. And this is also something that is really in the core of our network, to see these connections and then fight together on an eye-to-eye level, and not having this view of like consumers in the global north want to help out the workers in the global south a little bit, which have so problematic working conditions, because a lot of people also have like really precarious working conditions here as well.
Okay, yeah, you already mentioned this omnious we, so you are part of the exchange network. Maybe to start with, you can tell us a bit more about the network, its history, and yeah, what you are doing and how you also then maybe got to know Ditthi, for example.
Yeah, so the exchange network is part of the Thai network. Maybe I start a little bit like this. And Thai is in the long version Transnationals Information Exchange. It's a network of grassroots unionists and workers and activists that has already started in the 70s. And in the beginning, it actually started with looking at transnational companies. That's why it has the name as well, which sometimes confuses now. And it already had this perspective then, okay, companies are going transnational, so the workers' movement needs to stress its transnational roots again as well, and there needs to be an exchange and common struggles. And now the network is more focusing on the supply chains, not so much on the transnationals. It's just, of course, as every network, like having different waves of where are we active, what are the people that want to organize and work in the international field. Yeah, so we're working in like the garment sector at the moment, but also in some agricultural brands, linking like the production of oranges and orange juice in Brazil with the retail sector in Germany and Europe, and the same for wine production in South Africa, for example. So this is a bit the more general approach. And then I guess for the textile network itself, Ditthi can tell more about it because she's there much longer and can put more details to the history of that.
Yeah, Ditthi, feel free.
Yeah, so, well, the exchange network for the garment industry also predates me. It started kind of in the 80s, I think, and it was a much larger network of unions which were from Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. At that time, actually, India was not there because India didn't have garment unions at that time. Pakistan, I think there was one union from Australia, one from Thailand, and it was a much wider network, but it was more in terms of connecting workers and getting to really know how the other half lives, actually, more to look at it like that. So for the first several years, or almost till the 2000s, it was more like exchanges that were conducted between German workers who would come to South Asia, would come and meet workers, talk to them, get to live with them, understand their problems, so that it was a more like a grounded understanding of the situation of workers rather than something from the eyes of the global north, sitting in the global north, never really understanding what it is, never really connecting the conditions of the workers with the workers themselves. So it's always a whole story of feeling sorry for poor people in Bangladesh and poor people in Sri Lanka, rather than that, actually understanding the struggle of the workers, actually understanding how much they fight on the ground and what is the struggle that they're really fighting for, really understanding the issues. And that was something really that formed the core and the structure on which we were able to later now build the whole negotiation strategy, which we have worked on. And of course, we would say that for the last 6 or 7 years that we've been working with it, we've had small successes, but everybody's always asked us, do you really think that it's going to work? And we were never even sure that whether it will actually, honestly speaking. We always used to think, okay, this is theoretically possible, but is it really possible on the ground? But actually Gokuldas and the workers at Gokuldas, the 1,200 odd women in Gokuldas, taught us that it's possible. And if you stand out and if you struggle and if you're willing to stand against one of the most powerful transnational corporations and willing to take it out, it's possible. So it requires tremendous power, tremendous tenacity, but it's possible. And that's something that made us believe that this is not a dreamer's strategy, I would put it that way, but it's actually a real strategy that can be built on strong union power. So I think that is more or less what the exchange garment work has been for the last several years.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, what you talked about, like control and not having control about how your work changes, has obviously a lot to do with democracy, and or better, the lack of democracy. Nevertheless, we would also like to ask you more directly about your view on the concept of democratizing work, which is the theme of this conference, as well as the title of our podcast. And yeah, we realized after 10 episodes of our podcast that democratizing work and democracy at work really is something with a lot of perspectives and aspects to it. So if you could, briefly in 1 to 3 sentences, let us know your thoughts about the concept of democratizing work and what it means for you, what comes to your mind when you hear it or when you heard about this conference. And maybe Janina can start.
Okay, yeah, the major challenge is the little words now. Maybe to like take up the negotiation strategy first. Like this is really how we try to work along the value chain. So it really means that we build up power from the ground by organizing workers and not only having like some representatives, and therefore really put pressure on the companies being able to bargain, being able to shape working conditions, also having like a view on the future. How will things change? How will digitalization advance? And how can we have a real saying? So in this view, of course, this is a form of democratizing work by shaping it ourselves. But of course, it's not like this representative style of work. It's also like different from what you mostly have in mind in a German context with co-determination in this sense. Of course, it goes a little bit further than this. As I said before, like Saskia also would always stress, like the work councils, they're important, of course, and differently than in India, there is even like a new law now that tries to strengthen work council, because there is less and less in Germany, and co-determination is still kind of valued, but it also shows a crisis of organized labor. And of course, we try to put dynamic into it, but also, yeah, try to have workers come together and shape the working process, whether they're elected or not. So it's about having a say, but maybe, yeah, sometimes in a bit of different forms of democracy than representation might think of.
Thank you. Ditthi, do you want to share your view, your thoughts on it? And I think you have to, sorry for interrupting, but now we couldn't understand it, I think. So maybe try again really slowly. Maybe then it gets better. It's very, very difficult to understand, I think, like almost impossible.
Lisa, our technical moderator, maybe
Help us.
she could help us.
We are so sorry. There's always
Please.
work perfectly in the beginning. So.
Really sorry,
She's appearing. Okay.
I'm not able to do anything about the connection. I've written to the Hoping people, maybe they can do something, but if it's at Dithi's end, then I'm afraid I'm not sure we can do anything.
That's clear. That's clear.
Might it be worth trying that we continue and Ditthi tries to log out and log in again?
Sometimes it helps.
That sometimes helps.
But I don't know, there's no guarantee. Maybe, Ditthi, if you hear this, maybe you can try. Apologies for this. Yeah, okay.
Because, I mean, worst case would if you could not participate anymore, so. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Well, could it help if we also turn off our cameras?
I think it's more on the end of sending the...
there she is.
Hello, you're back.
Could it be the microphone? Like if you... Not really. It sounds even worse, I would say.
No, now we can't. Now we made things even worse.
For now, we just have to continue with Janina and maybe try again in a couple of minutes. I'm not sure if there's any other solution.
No.
Sorry.
Okay. Well.
Okay. So, Janina, you already talked about the importance of bottom-up approaches, not necessarily in opposition, but like together with representative forms. And one question we also wanted to ask you actually was, in how far do you feel that manifestos like the Manifest for Democratizing Work can somehow inspire or support such bottom-up struggles? Do you think this could be something that you can use in your work, in your corporations, or is it more like, to formulate it a bit provocative, an intellectual exercise that is not really something that the workers that are struggling on the ground can connect to?
Well, a little bit, I would say. Of course, this is also part of how this society is structured, that the fields are kind of separate, and of course, like most of the workers on the ground, they don't read a lot of manifestos. Like, they're interested in discussions, and like as we see it, they are the experts of the working conditions and of transformation processes themselves, partly. Of course, they also have like to educate them. They have to gain experiences by their struggle. But yeah, they have their own knowledge and they're building up their own knowledge. And I think more exchange would actually be good. And of course, it's important also to have support from scientists who also have like more time to do research. I mean, also me, myself, I don't work in the retail sector. And I try to support the workers on the ground by doing the research, additional research on digitalization, and then also like sharing the discussions with them, and yeah, just doing a kind of assistant work to what they need to build up the understanding and come together to find criteria for shaping the process, to build up strength, to bargain, and yeah, to then like shape the future. So this is kind of what I would say. So it's not an easy connection, but yeah, it's part of how it is structured at the moment. And I think it would be good to have more open discussions, and I mean also to be more open to like a worker's point of view in science. This is, I guess, also something I would like to say or stress.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think the conference is also an attempt to like to give an opportunity or to start such an exchange. And I'm also really curious to hear who participated in the conference overall. Like, where did people come from? Did it work out that there are people from the shop floor and activists and academics together? Yeah, definitely food for thought. And you already said it, not questions that can be answered in 1 to 2 sentences. So maybe we'll come back to that conversation in the open discussion in the end. Also, I could imagine that would be something interesting, and I'll also be curious to hear our audience's views on that.
Yes, now we have to improvise, Johanna. I don't know. I hope we did not lose Ditthi for good. I hope she comes back, but yeah, we will see. Well,
there are some questions in the Q&A and in the chat already, so maybe take these up.
Oh no electricity.
Yeah, I'm not sure she will come back. So
yeah.
Maybe if you could try to react to a few of the.
Yeah.
There was one question in the Q&A, but that was to Ditthi, I think.
Yes.
But there, in the chat there were some remarks, and maybe you could react to these.
Okay.
Can you see it, Felix?
Mm-hmm. Electricity. Okay, sorry. Sorry to everybody. I just needed to understand what's going on. Okay. Okay, I would say before we come to the Q&A session, we have maybe another 10 minutes of talk with Janina, and then go to the Q&A. So we can also prepare the Q&A a bit in the meantime. And I guess, yeah, we are not sure if he can come back. However, one question we had on our minds when we were preparing this this panel was also how does this look to connect this work to connect the workers from these two very different ends of the supply chain look like? So, and then also how do you do this? I mean, why is it worth for these people to come together, and how do you structure these meetings and these actions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, this question or these questions have a lot of levels. Maybe let me start a little bit with what I already talked about a bit, that we do these exchanges and we also talk about what are the effects on work on the workers, and we see a lot of similarities. And then also for the retail workers in Germany, of course, they also see the other effects, except for the effects on their body and on their psychological health. They also see that it's, of course, fast fashion has its own problems. It's like fast, there's a lot of production. It has like environmental effects and so on. So they have like a broader view on this. They also wonder and want to discuss like how will cities be shaped in the futures? Where does it lead us to that stores are closing? What is happening to city centers? Will we only have like storages and don't have like real human direct relations anymore? Will this be the future? So there's like big questions behind it in which workers are already interested in, but of course it's also not so easy to tackle them right away. And in the beginning, of course, they focus a bit on the working conditions, but like on both levels, on the more general and on the concrete working conditions, there's a lot of connections, as I said, between the working conditions along the value chain. And especially now with digitalization, you also see the connections getting closer and closer, as Ditthi and me already said. With the digitalization, there is big data now on how consumers consume, what they buy, what they're interested in. Like the companies try to see more precisely what the new trends will be, what will be consumed. So they try to order and produce only what they think is really asked for. So it really speeds up the process more and more, and it brings the value chain more closely together. So in this perspective, it's more and more obvious why workers should connect along the value chain, and why their working conditions are not separate and are just like steps of a chain where there is no actual connection between the people, but there is like really close connections. Yeah, so that's maybe content-wise. And then for how we work together, well, we have different formats. Of course, there is like regular calls between us. There's video calls. There's chats. There's information exchange, letting each other know about how certain meetings or bargaining processes have happened and what we could do as next steps together. And then there's also like bigger conferences where we really come together. I mean, we still need this like really coming together. It's obviously in an international work always not possible on a so regular basis, but at least like every 2 years or once a year, we try to really come together and have like a really deep discussion on how the year went, what new experiences we have, what has changed in our working conditions, what new approaches for bargaining did we try, and how can we exchange on them, and how can we strengthen our common practice like this. And then maybe coming back to the example of the Gokaldar struggle, where it is really sad now that Ditthi is not there, because she could have told so much more details and told about it so much better. But it really just worked that we had, like, as it is in our name, the information exchange kind of as a basis. So we had this relation, people knew each other, the workers knew each other, and then there was the fight coming up. So it only works if you already have this relation, and then there's a struggle coming up, which was in this case, like one of the Gokaldas factories in southern India was closing down. They were actually already reopening after the lockdown last spring. They were reopening for, I think, a week, and then they just like started to carry out the machinery. They didn't even let the workers know. They just closed it down all of a sudden. And so the protest started, and of course the protest also started, as Ditthi said as well, because workers were organized before as well. The women, they already were talking and fighting for their working conditions. And so at this point, they didn't just like, feel left behind, but they said, no, we cannot do that. We need to go on strike now, even though our workspace is kind of taken away already. We will still strike and fight for being able to work there again and having our rights at the workplace. So they had like a sit-in for weeks. They had an intense struggle on the ground. They asked to talk with the management to find another solution to like reinstall the workers. And all of this intense process on the ground then was exchanged with the H&M work councils. And since, they were producing a lot for H&M as well, it was one of their suppliers. The work councils tried to say, hey, H&M, you always have this face in your public appearance about being sustainable, about being a good company, about caring for the workers, also on your supply chain. Like you signed some general framework agreements with international unions. You refer to ILO standards or whatnot, but here we have the case. Here, like big violations of labor law have happened, and workers really have a big problem now in the crisis. And now you can show that you really stick to this responsibility. And of course, in the beginning, H&M was not very interested. But since also in Germany, there is already this international perspective made up for a longer time, with Saskia and the others like talking about the value chain and talking about what is happening in India constantly in the monthly meetings, in other negotiations with the management. So it's always there as a part of their work and part of their perspective on how the whole working and company strategy is out there. So this is also again then how the work councils in Germany could intervene and could put pressure, saying, hey, we know what is going on there in India. You can't tell us you're like a good company that is taking up its contracts and is working on sustainable relations between companies, but we really know what's going on the ground. We also don't want to hear what the Go Colors management is telling us. We have the information from the ground. We know what is happening. We also know that there's threatening happening on the ground, and we want it to stop. And this is like, I think, an important part of it, that this really makes up a kind of different kind of public as well. So it's a public where workers come together and they put pressure on the management on both ends of the supply chain. And this is something companies are really afraid of. I think this is something I could say companies are more afraid of than of consumers being critical. They are more and more critical. It's not bad, of course. And it's also good if they ask for information and support the workers. But what really stresses out management is if the workers themselves, they know about each other and they are getting like nervous themselves. They say, hey, we're not okay, also with violations on another part of the value chain. So yeah, I think this is kind of how it works, and I hope it gave a little bit of an insight how it maybe also works different than other forms of campaigning for better working conditions in the global south.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I found it very interesting because it appears to me that like the key is also just to, and I guess that's also sometimes hard to build and then expand in the internationalist perspective also in the Works Council, because I mean it is an elected Works Council in Germany doesn't have at its core mandate doesn't have to care about where the products are coming from. but apparently through your work you were able to also maybe foster some change in that perspective. The time is running. Johanna,
maybe I could just add quickly. Sorry to interrupt you. I would just say, like, and of course it's not like a one-way street. It's not only like the European supporting the global South, but I think it brings a new dynamic to everybody, and I think that's also why people are interested and want to join, even though of course it's also a lot of work. But yeah, it gives them really a feeling of being supported on a much broader level.
Yeah, that's true, of course. I just thought about, like, you know, because that's the context I know, but of course, yeah. Okay, Johanna.
Yeah, I think looking at the time, we should, I mean, yeah, sorry that we have to improvise so much in that session, but things didn't work out quite as we had planned it. So I would say we should just open the discussion now, because there are a lot of questions and this is great, and people should get the chance to ask their questions now. Since, as far as I can see, it's like three participants that have questions and comments. So maybe it would be possible that they could ask or comment themselves with the audio and video, and we do not have to read out their questions.
So those who would like to ask a question, if you could click on add video and audio, then I can admit you.
So the
we have to do that.
No, they have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But sometimes people are not in a position where they can easily do that.
Yeah, that's also true.
So the alternative would be that you actually read out the questions and then Janina takes them.
Okay. Do we see if someone is asking for the permission to speak? Okay,
I'm not getting any requests right now. So I assume it's better to read the questions for now.
Yeah, then we'll do it like that. So I think one of the first questions was by Ross Hurley, and you were asking, I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with my screen here, so I can not see the complete question.
Do you want me to read the questions?
Yes. No, I have it. I don't know.
Yeah,
It keeps disappearing when I move my cursor, but now I can see it. So the question by Ross Hurley was, are you saying that employers are now forcing workers to work harder and longer hours with lower wages so that the company can recover the losses they suffered in the pandemic? And there's only Janina to answer, so would you like to answer directly to that?
I'm sorry, I was actually also looking at the technical part again. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was whether you would agree, or you would say that employers are trying to force workers to work harder and longer hours with lower wages to make up the losses they suffered, the company suffered in the pandemic, like making the workers pay.
Well, yes, partly, of course. Like, this is also what Ditthi described with the fastening up of the working routines in the production. And this is also what we see in retail here, rather in the form of stores closing. People are fired and there's no replacement for the workers in the stores that are still open. And so it's more and more work for less and less people. So in the end, of course, they have to raise their productivity or they have to say just, hey, it's not working like this. A position which we try to get into, of course, a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this is also a bit like how our economy works. It's mostly like the workers that have to make up for the problems, smaller or bigger ones, for crisis, even though they are not the ones in charge of the big decisions normally.
Thank you. So then we also have quite a lot of comments and also some questions from Neue Amante. I hope I'm not pronouncing it completely wrong, from the University of Philippines. And so he hopes for more discussions on concrete industry applications on democratizing work and also sharing outcomes in other commodities, including digital work, food, leisure work, and the like. So I understand that's like more a proposal for the future or so. I don't know, Janina, if you can say something on that here now, like on other areas, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I get the question 100%, but I think, yeah, the whole field of digitalization, of course, it's still kind of new, and workers and unions also try to find their positions on it, and also a lot of research needs to be done. So, of course, like now, I guess it's only starting that there can be like good practices, examples shared, and then also used for other cases or for other industry and fields. And yeah, of course, I would wish for this to happen more.
Yeah, maybe also in this direction. I mean, when we look at the garment supply chain, there is the sphere of transport, and for example, also the people who maybe deliver the online packages, which are, at least in Germany, also working sometimes under horrible conditions. Are there any contacts to these kind of delivery, delivery unions or delivery workers at the moment?
At the moment, unfortunately not, but of course it would also be a good part of it. There is contacts to the big storages, though, that are mostly or more in Southern Europe. Like there's big storages in Italy and Spain for Zara, for example, and we have contacts there. So we try to include this step of the supply chain more. But then on the other hand, also, it's part of the company's strategy not necessarily to use delivery services, but to do like pick and collect, so that people still come to the store even though they use an online service, because in the best case for the company, they will buy something else on the side. And at the same time, it's not more cost for the company. That is also something what we see, like during the closing times of the stores in the pandemic, some of the workers already had to give out packages and kind of act as the online store. This was like limited to a certain amount because they had some agreements on this, and they also refused to take over all the work. Maybe the management should pay somebody else for, but it's already part of the work in the store now as well. And it's like one big additional task that the colleagues are talking about constantly, that they have to give out packages, that they feel like being the mailman themselves. So yeah, there is not even a need to pay somebody else with like a not good wage.
Okay, so yeah, there were also some comments in the direction of the delivery workers and freelance workers from our colleague from Philippines. So there's definitely also a rise in that there, and also he commented that in many countries, or only in few countries, it has been clarified that these are employment relations. So this might change also organizing in that area for the future. Yeah, Janina?
Yeah, even though we don't really know about the delivery sector so much, but we can also say that even within the stores, like looking at the little storages they have there, there's also work that is done by third companies already. So some of the work that was done by employees of the stores themselves before is already outsourced, and this is actually also possible because of the new technological devices. So how you put like an official employee-employer relation in Germany, it's by the employer giving direct orders to the employee. And this is kind of different now with the technical devices. So the technical devices tell people where to put the clothes in the storage. So this is, at least for now, how the management is arguing that this is not like an employee status, and that they can outsource this task and give them out as like a piecework contract to third companies.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just a small note again. I searched how I can admit people to this room from the audience. Unfortunately, I find no way. So I'm very sorry for this. I also haven't used this platform before. It is a bit of a shame that we cannot do this because, of course, we would have liked to see your faces and listen to your questions and comments directly. So
we'll do this. I can admit them, but they need to first initiate this. You cannot initiate it.
Okay, so maybe Lisa, you can shortly explain how people can ask to get on this digital stage. Thank you.
As I said, you need to go to share video and audio, and then I will see your name popping up and I can admit people. But I think one person said in the chat that they have not such a good Wi-Fi, and that's why maybe they're not doing it. So I think we need to be aware of that as well. Not everyone can actually do it.
Of course.
Yeah, and if you feel we do not represent your questions or comments well, just send another question and comment in the chat and we try to react. So another question that came up was if there is any way workers further down the supply chain, those with the subcontractors, also home-based workers, can be included in the bargaining process, and all our opinions are asked on that. But Janina, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's even more difficult to include them, but at the same time, it's always our aim to be inclusive. So, of course, we try to have relation with everybody around the fields we're working in. But to be honest, like for the German part, what I just said with the outsourced tasks also in the storages within the store, it's not so easy because there's also like a degradation of the relation between the different workers, and it's not so easy for them to get into like a relation of solidarity. Of course, that is something they reflect on and they try to change. But there's like additional like different working hours. There might be like language barriers. So there's a lot of additional hurdles to take. And of course it would be good. And we try to see like the whole process still, but we don't have much experience on the ground for now, I think. And for India, I actually can't say really at the moment.
Do you want to share something, Felix, on it, or? So yeah, it just came to my mind when reading the question that I guess with home-based refers to people who have been working from home before the pandemic already, but it just brought to my mind that much more people are now making the experience of working from home, which brings definitely some problems for organizing and sharing experiences, sharing struggles, but might also offer opportunities to learn how to do that. And as long as there are the technical possibilities, this could be a chance maybe also to be able to be in touch with people that have been working from home before the pandemic already. So maybe that is also a tiny chance or a tiny window of opportunity that this is now becoming the reality for much more people, and also for people that have high education and maybe have been organized in unions before they have been sent home in home office. And so maybe that could help, but it's definitely very difficult, I think, to include these workers in the bargaining process. So as far as I can see, there are no new questions. Check in the chat also.
No, there aren't. I just checked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be a chance to throw in another question now, if someone has been thinking about it.
Maybe it would be also possible for you to make a copy of the chat, because I think there's interesting comments in it, and I think I'm a bit overwhelmed at the moment, but thanks for all the comments and questions so far.
Yeah, for people who want to stay in touch and maybe also be able to reach Janina or Ditthi, I will just post our podcast email address, so you can write us there, and we can forward your message also.
Yeah, also if you want to find out more about the podcast, I posted the link in the chat. Even though we have a catchy English title, we have to say the podcast is in German. So this will be our first episode. That will not be in German. But you're nonetheless welcome to check it out and have a look. And recommend it to people who speak or can understand German. So if there are no more questions, maybe as a final question, I would like to ask you, Janina, if you want to share some plans that the exchange networks may have for the future, if there is something that you would like to advertise or to inform people about.
Yeah, of course we do have plans. We always making plans, and of course looking for the future to shape it. But yeah, we had a conference in the beginning of last year, and we had a lot of concrete plans to strengthen our international network. And then Corona came, and of course we had new experiences now and successful experience as well with Gokaldas, but also other things didn't work as we wanted it, also delegation travels couldn't take place. We wanted to deepen our exchange in the European Zara network, but also with South Africa, and it just took longer than expected, of course, or longer than planned. And even with the workers in Germany, of course, it was not an easy time to organize, but we also see that things are picking up again this year, that we have also learned something from this year. We have also seen, as it is of course often stressed now, how social conflicts have also been more dense in the crisis, and you see how digitalization is accelerating. Nobody can deny anymore now that there are big changes are still coming up, and so yeah, we try to build up the pressure to make it work in our way the best possible. And as we already mentioned, for the international component of our work, we want to stress digitalization there more as well. Like the Go-Calda struggle, it was like a successful struggle for reinstalling the workers and for this international cooperation, but it was not directly linked to digitalization now. So we want to work more on this topic and also shape the supply chain, in accordance to the needs that come up on both ends. And we have a new international conference next February. And we totally hope that it can take place. But now I'm pretty positive that it does. And then Johanna, you also posted the Thai Germany website I saw, so there you can also see our newsletters and follow the discussion a little bit. We try to normally have them in German, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. We don't always manage, but it's at least not so bad in international access. So you can also have a look there and see about our activities. And of course, we're also interested always in new exchanges and also good practice examples from other people, other workers, other unions. So we're always open for new exchange as well.
Yes, so thank you very much, Janina, to be here. Thank you, Lisa, for bearing with us as a technical moderator, and also to all of the people who were with us. As I said, if you have further questions, you can either contact the Exchange Network, maybe directly through, you will find their contacts in the link, or you write us an email to podcast@fnpa.eu. With that, I would say thank you to all of you, and have a good rest of the conference.
And just one final remark, in case you didn't notice, in about 1 hour, there will be 2 more sessions that have a global focus. So at night, the times differ depending on where you are. So they start in about 1 hour. And one is Disorienting Neoliberalism, Global Justice and the Outer Limit of Freedom. And the other one is Where is the Voice of Workers in the Globalized Economy, the Current Crisis? So I think these sound very exciting too. And maybe see some of you there and have a good conference.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.